Father, Son, and Violin. A personal life story tells the vivid of Mao's China. Daniel Olson Chen. Dedicated to my parents and all of their generation.
Special acknowledgements.
My special thanks to Ms. Mercedes Larbenz. Without her encouragement and inspiration, hard work in editing, artwork and her publishing assistance, this book would never have been made public. 4. Meeting Yenwa, English Improvement. When the sun rose the next morning, I was happy again as I could forget all the problems, at least for more than 12 hours. I went to the conservatory with high spirits as usual. At noon I saw a slender girl writing on a public blackboard post on campus. Her curved body reminded me of Nini, again. I walked up involuntarily. I looked at her closely, what she wrote on the blackboard closely. Guess what I found? 2 misprinted words in the English she wrote.
Excuse me, but...
I said in English.
Do you understand English?
She turned her face around to look at me. Oh my God. My chairman Mao, she did not look like Nini, she was more than Nini, not only the face, but also the voice and the way she talked. I wondered how she interpreted the look of my mouth half open. She flashed a captivating smile and said,
My practice room is 407 at the piano building, you spoony.
She quickly corrected the 2 misprints and walked away toward the piano building. I followed her without thinking. Room 407 was on the 4th floor of the piano building. Each room on the 4th floor was fixed for certain piano students to use, unlike our 3rd floor in the orchestra building, which was first come first serve. I followed her up. She turned her head to check if I was still with her. That encouraged me a great deal. I chased her up to the 4th floor and knocked on her door like a gentleman.
The door is open,
came her voice from inside. I pushed the door open and hesitated whether or not I should close it, as at that time if a boy and girl were together in a room with the door closed, it also led people to think, and in reality there most probably was, a boy-girl thing going on in there. She walked toward the door, slightly checked outside the doorway, and then lightly closed the door. A few very simple sentences were exchanged, such as "What's your name and where are you from?" in English. She told me her name was Yenwa, from Beijing, and asked me if I could be her private English tutor. The trade was that I would be allowed to use her piano room freely, anytime when she was not practicing her piano, which included 10 p.m. to 7 a.m. A deal was made. Everything went smooth, for the time being. The trouble was, my English wasn't very good, in fact not any better than Yenwa's, maybe worse. Now let's not forget Dongya. Dongya was no doubt the most important figure to me during my entire 4 years in Shanghai. In fact, the story between us alone could be worth writing another book. However, as this book is mainly telling the story of Father, Son, and Violin, Dongya's role is intentionally weakened. Coming to reality, Dongya was an artist, working for the Shanghai Health Publicity Bureau. In that year, her painted poster won the first prize of the National Health Publicity Contest. Perhaps being influenced by me, she also decided to pursue her art studies at the Nanjing Fine Art Institute. That is to say, Dongya was away from me, at least physically, while Yenwa was in my everyday life, literally every day. As I described, she was slim, but not her breasts. She was from Beijing, a big city, pioneer of modern fashion competing with Shanghai. Her fashion style was very sexy, full-sized breasts pushed the frock open between clasps, as well as her little round bottom bundled inside the very tight jeans, and especially her feet in her white high heels. That kind of appearance would be nothing today, yet it was the beginning of the 80s in China. Deng's movement of reform and open was just getting started. By that time, corset trousers and high heels, particularly high heels, were rather rare. Perhaps it was from that very moment that I became a captive of high heels. Obviously, Yenwa was from a good family, a rich family I mean. Otherwise she wouldn't be able to learn piano or invite me out for dinner so often. I can still recall clearly the first time she took me to a Western food restaurant, which was also the first time for me to be in a Western restaurant. It was after school. I had to go out first, waiting for her outside of the school somewhere, as all boy-girl activities had to be kept underground. After we met, I followed her to the Western restaurant. For the sake of my vanity, I stepped in front of her and led her into the restaurant. Holding the menu, I believed her when she said diet. Yet I said I wasn't really hungry, which was an absolute lie. No matter how carefully I chose from the menu, I worried if my wallet was able to take the challenge. However, when the meal was over, she didn't even give my wallet a chance. Immediately my heart felt lighter, and heavier at the same time. In the evening we walked side by side along the Waitan, the most popular spot in Shanghai, just like the other couples walking there. Facing the seawater, she hummed an English song, "Love Me Tender." That was the first of 1,000 times that I heard this song. That overwhelmingly wonderful feeling, no words are enough to describe.
I wish tonight could last forever.
I uttered my poetic feeling.
Why forever? Is there no tomorrow?
She yawned, not at all corresponding with my romantic mood. That woke me up to the fact that we weren't exactly boy-girl friends, but English practice partners, plus perhaps, her companion of convenience.
Of course, there will be a tomorrow. Tomorrow is Monday, my morning is early.
That terminated the conversation, along with the romantic mood, as when we came out, we had to go back separately, in order that no schoolmates see us. I said goodbye to her and was about to walk away, when she suddenly turned her face to me, held my head toward her and put her mouth against mine, drilling her tongue into my mouth. Not only did I not know what that was about, I was a little worried that this kind of unhygienic behavior might pass disease.
What are you doing?
I said, astonished.
Kissing, that's the word in English. We should practice too.
She laughed, as if she was playing with a pet. Back to her piano room. It was rather late. But I was too excited to fall asleep. Thinking of the taste of her tongue remaining in my mouth, her flexible sexy body, and the elegant fragrance of hers, I couldn't help my hand comforting my man's growing part. With her smell on her piano, her books, everything in the room, that night, I don't know how many times I made good use of the towel beside my pillow, not really a pillow but a pile of Yenwa's piano scores. The next morning, after our classes were over and before lunch, I had about 20 minutes together with her in the piano room. She acted as if nothing had happened the night before and sat in front of the piano playing emotionlessly. I was about to go out to avoid disturbing her when she stopped me and said,
Could you rub my shoulder? I feel so sore here.
Of course, I was at her service. She seemed to enjoy it very much, acting as if she were drunk. She stood up and asked me to sit on the piano bench, and then she sat on me. She started again to play the piano. Her buttocks moved up and down, back and forth, side to side, on my man's part. After only a short moment I couldn't handle any more. She suddenly ordered me to speak English, as that would turn her on very much.
This is a pen, this is a pen, this is a.
Hold! I got to go to the toilet!
I used the last ability of controlling my body, with my legs tightly clamped. I got away. A bunch of laughter accompanied me all the way out. That was one of the many little games Yenwa liked to play with me. She knew I had a girlfriend. That didn't concern her, not at all. On the contrary, she felt safe. And to steal from someone's men gave her another kind of satisfaction. To her, I was no more than a pet, perhaps, but frankly speaking, I really felt very proud and satisfied to be with her too, particularly when we were walking on the street making people turn their heads. I knew by then that if I wanted to keep my position, more importantly the right to use the piano room, the weapon was to keep her feeling mysterious about me and admiring my English. For that, I secretly started to study English very hard. When I say very hard, I mean I put almost all my possible time and energy into it. I even took an extra English class at another university. As a result, I had to ride my bicycle back and forth every day between two institutions. I made very good use of my ear as a musician so I could remember things easily once I heard them. I used the tape recorder Dongya bought for me for studying music, to record the English I learned during the day and then listen to it over again and again all night. Thanks to Dongya not being around, I had the time to do so. By this method, I could remember almost everything I had studied during the day. Moreover, I even tried to learn the entire list of illustrative sentences in the Oxford Dictionary by heart. With such an attitude and effort, in Chinese we say, the spirit of grinding an iron rod to be a needle. When Yenwa asked me English questions, how could she not be surprised over and over again? I remember Yenwa said to me, if your knowledge were your semen, I would suck you as dry as a mummy. Thank God that was only words, not action. To be with Yenwa was relaxed and safe. No matter if we were going to a movie, concert, or restaurant, she would never let me touch my wallet. Not only that, but from time to time she even gave me some cash. Using Yenwa's cash to help Dongya with her economic emergencies happened occasionally. People are like that. Anything could be shameful in the beginning, gradually they would get used to it. As we Chinese say, when it becomes a habit it will be natural. 1 year went very fast. One day Yenwa took me to a hotel room. There for first time in my life I saw a striptease dance by Yenwa. When I was seduced to the point of being out of control, she bit my ear.
This is your first and last chance. So, you do what you want even if you want to know deep inside me. I'll accompany you days and nights without eating and drinking as far as you can. In one word, I'm all yours.
She said as she started to unzip my pants. It was at that very moment, the image of Dongya appeared in my mind, so clearly and so strong. I held her hands, and put her hands around my waist. I hugged her, like a big brother. She wasn't really disappointed or hurt and said,
Okay, you had your chance. I offered what I have for all you did for me for the whole year.
I see, it was just a thank you party for me being her pet for a year. Nothing really personal, I mean emotionally. I felt somehow relieved. I got what I needed, very badly, and I had my fan too. Both win. Everybody is happy and nobody got hurt. The party was over and Yenwa started to get dressed. Then she said to me,
I've already got my visa to the USA.
Ha, that explains everything. Now I know why you wanted to learn English so badly.
I said. She smiled and added,
How about you? I mean, when do you plan to go abroad?
Me, go abroad.
What a daydream question. Life, sometimes, is really like a game. You never know where your fate is going to take you. Like when I was in Hunan, I never thought I could go to Shanghai. When I was in Shanghai, I never thought I would go abroad. Now I am everywhere in the world. Where else could I go? Outer space. How to write about Yenwa. I have been very hesitant, because what happened between us was very difficult to classify, as it was a little bit of everything. Anyway, it was a kind of uncommon relationship that could happen between any two young Chinese people at that time. Later I asked Yenwa.
There are so many young men out there. Why me?
Her answer was very simple and direct.
Because you look like my father.
Through many conversations I figured out that her father was her first lover. They started to play love games when she was only 15. It developed into a habit that she couldn't live without. I also found out that her father wasn't the only love game partner of hers. She has partners all the time, more than one at the same time, and all of her father's age or older. That also explains why she was never in lack of money. Later, a doctor told me that girls like her could be suffering from a kind of sexual-related physical as well as mental problem. For girls like her, love games were needed as a kind of medical treatment. After all, I'm grateful to Yenwa for the room, for building me a solid English foundation, which would be of great significance in my future life, and now I live on this language, and all kinds of the little love games, and for everything. After the farewell party, Yenwa went back to Beijing and I remained in her piano room until the next year. I moved into the school dormitory. About Yenwa, around 13 years later, we met again in Ohio briefly, only for 15 minutes at a coffee shop at Oberlin College. She was married and divorced and remarried and redivorced and so on. Not a single word was mentioned about those little love games we played during that year at school. Since then, I never heard anything from Yenwa, not a single word. I just wish all the best for her, no matter where on earth she might be now. Five, focus on studies in the second year. I didn't gain much obvious progress in my violin studies during the first school year. Apart from all the reasons in my previous story, my teacher, Xing Zhonghua, was also part of this. She had just given birth to her third child, and in addition she was having constant domestic conflicts. Literally, physical conflicts. Her coming to school with panda eyes was not unusual. When we had lessons, sometimes she played the violin more than I did. She was criticized by the school authority for practicing her violin rather than giving lessons to the students during school hours, far before I came. Nevertheless, Teacher Xing had her good points, especially to me. We will have more details about her later. I was very bad at student concerts. During the first one I was on stage playing Beethoven's Romance, and I cut into the piano one bar too early. The second time was even worse, in which I played Bruch's Violin Concerto and withdrew from the stage in the middle of the third movement. However, since moving into the student dormitory for the second year, I was able to concentrate all my energy, time, and mind on practicing the violin. In addition, I took as many elective courses as I was allowed. In that period, I was really like a piece of dry sponge thrown into an ocean of knowledge. My great leap forward on my studies made my teachers happy and classmates envious. Perhaps because of my rapid progress, my violin teacher Xing revealed her idle nature fully. She came to the lesson room without bringing her violin, instead, some nice leftover dishes. After she had the door closed, she would open a lunchbox.
I made, try, see if you like it.
While I devoured voraciously, she would use my violin to play the piece of music I was studying, from beginning to end. You know how long a violin concerto lasts, about 30 minutes, while a lesson was about 40 minutes. That means, by the time she finished the concerto, one lesson was almost over. Nevertheless, she always remembered to ask me in the end, how did it taste? Although not sure she meant the taste of the music she played, or the dishes she made, my answer was always, it tasted great. Of course I meant her dishes, as I really felt, compared with her violin playing, her dishes certainly tasted better. Teacher Xing was not only idle but also somewhat slovenly, quite often forgetting things, this or that, absent-minded as English says. I remember one time during a lesson, she eventually noticed that her socks were mismatched, one black and one white, which amused me. Her explanation was, she came in a hurry and couldn't find both of either. When the lesson began, her black shoulder rest dropped off of her violin. When I hurried to pick it up and hand it to her, she was extremely embarrassed.
Here you are, my other black sock.
As a student I couldn't ha ha ha, therefore I hummed. Occasionally teacher Shen came to the lesson room with her face colored and swollen or bandaged. No need to ask, last night she was again with her husband. The victory or defeat was a common matter in a conflict. Gradually, I started to like the way teacher Shen taught me, as her way of teaching, if I may call it, her way of teaching, gave me much freedom which forced me to think and develop my own style of playing independently, unlike some of my schoolmates who followed their teachers so closely that they became copies of them. Without the teacher, they didn't know how to play. The student concert that I participated in the second year was lifelong unforgettable. I played French composer Frank's violin and piano sonata in a major. When it was excellently over, I gained a long warm applause. I too, like all artists, am a slave of applause. Since then, I could feel the obvious change of attitude from classmates toward me. Six, senior year, learning to make money. Regarding my violin study, I made big progress in the second year. The third year went okay, but in the fourth year it started to go downhill rapidly. The reason was that I had made an acquaintance, a man called Chai Ben. Chai was the art editor of the school journal. It seemed to be all by accident getting to know him, but I still feel that it was kind of predestined. I even think that it was God's arrangement, for knowing him became very significant to my future. The following is how I got to know him. One day I went to the school journal office to see another teacher and I happened to see Chai talking with a foreigner about a Chinese painting. Seeing them not use their mouths but hands, faces and whole bodies to communicate, I seized the opportunity to practice my English. By translating, I learned that Chai was trying to sell his own Chinese painting to the foreigner. In his rather humble and sincere tone, he used some quite proud language. As a result, the foreigner opened his wallet with a satisfactory smile. Chai also smiled satisfactorily. I knew the painting had sold for a good price. I didn't give much thought to this matter, yet unexpectedly, Chai waited for me at the doorway of the school dining hall.
"We eat out,"
he said to me. On the table in a restaurant, Chai handed me some money, as much as 10 RMB. I was in such ignorance at that time that I refused to take the money. You know, maybe you don't know, 10 RMB wasn't a small sum, it was equal to 1/5 of my monthly wage. I said to him,
It cost me nothing to help you. Offering me a nice meal in such a restaurant is more than enough. How could I accept your money?
Chai interrupted me and said,
"Take it, we don't steal nor rob, we make money by our own skill. From now on, we are partners. Besides, I'm supposed to be your teacher, listening to teacher wouldn't be wrong."
My business sense initiated from the bill of 10 RMB. From then on, not only would Chai come to me every time business opportunities with foreign guests arose, sometimes I actively helped him find sales targets. Every time, as soon as a painting was sold, I would immediately calculate how much my share should be. To sell paintings, from time to time I even played truant. In addition to selling paintings, Chai also received a contract of 2 color photo calendars from the Shanghai publishing house, one theme of children and musical instruments, the other theme of beautiful girls and musical instruments. For the sake of practicing the technique of photography, Chai lent me a Shanghai-made Seagull brand, single-lens reflex camera, which was supposed to be a top-quality camera in China at that time, as well as helping me buy sufficient amounts of black and white film at an extra discount price from the Shanghai Film Production Studio. I used the money from selling paintings to invest in a complete set of black and white darkroom equipment. In my very small room I started an underground photography studio. My strategy was, small profit with many sales. Taking photos for schoolmates was free of charge, which is of great temptation to schoolmates, but after the photos were processed, I charged 10 RMB per photo. When my schoolmates saw their own photographs, few could resist opening their wallets. Several weeks later, I received more business than I could handle. When my skill of taking photos reached a certain level, I started to get into touch with beautiful girl models. That made some schoolmates badly envious. With the rumor spread, one day my violin teacher Xing visited my little studio without informing me in advance, probably wanting to catch me on the spot doing photos, or girls.
It's close to the final examination. You don't practice your violin. What the hell are you doing with your bloody camera?
Teacher scolded me in the corridor of my dormitory. Scolding means someone is concerned about me, and for that I was grateful. But Teacher Xing's scolding was not strong enough to resist the temptation of money. I still used one hand to play Sibelius Violin Concerto for the final examination and the other to take photos, earning money and seeking beautiful female models. One thing here I have to make very clear: I was totally faithful to Dongya, and never had anything with the models more than modeling. After the calendars were published, I haggled a little with Chai about how to divide the profits. But friendship was more important. Accurately speaking, the next business was more important. The next business was cooperating with the Shanghai film production studio to make a pop song music tape. Disappointingly, that business consumed much of my time and energy but earned little money. Perhaps to compensate for my time and effort, just before approaching my graduation examination, Chai helped me get a small role as an actor in a movie. Consequently, I postponed my examination, going to the Stone Island in Shandong province with the film crew of the Shanghai film production studio. All these irresponsible behaviors made my teacher Xing very upset. When I returned back to Shanghai from the filmmaking, all my classmates had graduated, leaving me alone for the makeup exam. By then, my girlfriend Dongya had also come back to Shanghai from Nanjing. Under the heavy pressure from teacher Xing and the close watch of Dongya, I temporarily distanced myself from Chai and concentrated on practicing my violin. In that period, Dongya came to see me in my dorm very often. She always requested I play my examination, the Sibelius Violin Concerto, from the beginning to the end. Looking at Dongya, the way she looked at me with admiration, once again I was aware of my value as a violinist. I even had a little regret for the time that I had wasted. I decided to make every effort to remedy this. In addition to the distraction, there was another problem holding my violin studies back: my violin and my bow, especially the bow. At that time I had no personal violin. I took the best, or more correctly, the most expensive violin from Hunan Radio and TV Orchestra. Yet the most expensive did not necessarily mean the best, depending on the individual. My bow was too heavy and too stiff. Every time I played, I had to lift the bow up so as not to kill the sound. We all know lifting up is always more difficult than dropping down. After hours, weeks, months, and years of this lifting up business, I grew a very bad pain in my back. Every time I played the violin, the pain just killed me, and of course my body was in no way relaxed. My violin was also a violin out of which it was difficult to produce sound, especially the E-string side that sounded as if it were muted. This demanded I use extra strength. Anyway, bad bow, bad violin plus bad combination, made me feel like I was wearing steel shoes to run a marathon. I think in this world, many violin students, if not most of them, are suffering more or less this kind of problem. This was all until one day when my violin was open and I had to have it repaired, so I borrowed a violin and bow, much cheaper, a much cheaper one, for practice. To my enormous surprise, the violin and bow I borrowed were much easier for me to play. That's when I knew where my problem lay. I borrowed that violin and bow, initially for a week, but this stretched into months, until I completed my graduation examination. Thinking back, I strongly feel that in the process of my growth, the people surrounding me, teachers, classmates, friends, and last but not least the girls close to me, had great influence on me in my life. Just before the graduation examination, again, an accident occurred. My girlfriend Dongya was pregnant. My girlfriend Dongya was pregnant. Please give me a minute to explain how the baby happened. Believe it or not, even though my girlfriend was pregnant, I was practically a virgin. What a joke, how could that be? Yes, nothing is impossible, in our great country with our great people. I have always been ashamed to talk about it, until recently, I thought it wouldn't hurt anyone anymore, why not to tell the truth to amuse our readers? First of all, the idea to have a baby came from someone who told us I could stay in Shanghai instead of returning back to Hunan, where I was from, if we got married as soon as I graduated from the conservatory. They said that if we had a child, Dongya's working unit should provide a room for us to live together. It sounded great, but the problem remained, how could we make that baby? I remember Mimi told me that if I put mine inside her she could have a baby. That's simple and understandable, but where could we put the process into practice, as I couldn't go to Dongya's home, and my dormitory was shared by another schoolmate. At that time in Shanghai, there were some very popular places for making babies, public parks, during the night. I wonder how many of Shanghai's population was produced there. We too decided to follow the masses and give it a try. One night, Dongya borrowed her sister's skirt, she herself never wore skirts, and I had on no underpants. Both of us got ourselves ready to fight for having a future together. But after we went to the park, we found we were just too late, as almost all possible dark places were occupied by other couples. When we thought we were unlucky, the security guards came and the couple near us was captured on the spot. They refused to go with the guards as they had a marriage certificate in their hands. I was very surprised and asked them why they don't do it at home, as they are legal husband and wife. They told us their working unit wouldn't give them a room to live together before they had a child. But without a room, how could they make babies? All of us, the couple, the security guards and us, laughed with bitterness. We and the married couple were in the same boat. After that incident, Dongya was too afraid to be caught and sent to her work unit, as that would be very shameful for a girl. Therefore the next solution was a test tube baby. Dongya was working at a government family planning propaganda unit, and I think it must have been from there that she got to know the test tube baby making modern technology. One day she came to me with a big syringe and asked me to put my semen into the syringe and hand it back to her. That was my part of the business and was fairly easy, as I had plenty of practice since being a teenager, the rest was hers. And it worked. However, after we found out more about marriage-related information, we realized pregnancy, and even sex before marriage, was considered a crime at that time in China. As the delay of my exam from school caused the delay of our marriage, we both knew how big a mistake the too early pregnancy was. I was in deep, deep trouble. The rumor spread to my working unit, the Hunan Radio and TV Orchestra. Secretary Yu, Nini's mother, who used to be my protection umbrella, this time loudly roared her order at Chief Lu.
Immediately send a comrade to Shanghai to bring that criminal back to me.
Nowadays, pregnancy before marriage in China isn't a big deal, not at all a thing. But at that time, such a thing could ruin a man's whole life.